students, once again a hearty welcome to the English world of Aradhya. Students, myself Rasmin sir, teaching English to the students of 9 to 12 standards in English medium. Now in my previous videos we had seen your first lesson from your second book, Footprints Without Foot. Okay, the title of the lesson was A Triumph of Surgery, and you have come to know what happens in the story. Three characters mainly we come into this lesson. Okay, Mrs. Pumphrey, Tricky and Dr. Harriet. And earlier only, at the initial stage only, Tricky is shown in the critical condition. Mrs. Pumphrey is a very rich lady who overfits Tricky. All those things we know. Today we will discuss only the question answers of this lesson. Your first question on the first page is, why is Mrs. Pumphrey worried about Tricky? So Mrs. Pumphrey is very much worried about Tricky because Tricky has overgrown due to overfeeding. Okay, Tricky's condition, he has become so hugely fat that it is very difficult for him to move also. Okay, he is like a bloated sausage with a leg at each corner, and plus we can see in his eyes bloodshot and roomy, and because of this condition, okay, his tongue also just lolled from his jaws. Because of this condition only, Mrs. Pumphrey is very much worried. And later when second time Dr. Harriet sees Tricky, that time Tricky is not able to move only. Tricky does not eat even his favorite dishes. Okay, he just wants to lie down. That is the condition of Tricky. So that's why Mrs. Pumphrey is worried. Okay, second question. What does she do to help him? Is he wise in this? Okay, so what she does, when first time Tricky is like a bloated sausage, okay, and his tongue is also lolling, so that time Mrs. Pumphrey gives him some extra Horlicks, cod liver oil, okay, and a bowl of Horlicks and cod liver oils and some malt. So all these things she still gives to Tricky, thinking that he would get all right. And she is also not taking him for any exercise. That is her idea. Tricky looks sick, so he requires some rest, and that's why she provides all these things to her. Okay, so is she wise in this? So she is not wise at all. The actual thing is her Tricky's food portion should be cut down, and Mrs. Pumphrey is doing just the opposite by giving some more to him to eat. Plus Tricky requires exercises, she cuts down his exercise. So what she should not do, that she does, and what she is supposed to do, she does not do. That is what we can say, that she is not wise at all. Who is the I in the story? So the entire story is narrated to us by Dr. James Harriet. At the end of the lesson it is written. So I over here is Dr. James Harriet. Okay. Then we come to your next questions on page 3. Okay, students, in that first question is the narrator as rich as Tricky's mistress? No. Dr. Harriet is not that rich. Okay, in the end of the lesson we come to know, first time when Tricky is Mrs. Pumphrey is taking Tricky for a walk, that time we don't get the complete information that she is a very rich lady. Only Tricky has put on that coat, special coat. From that we can say that okay, Mrs. Pumphrey is a rich lady, but not that rich. But when she starts sending different foods, okay, for Tricky's treatment, eggs, brandy, bottles of wines and all that, that time we come to know that okay, yeah, she is rich enough. And when Tricky is taken to the surgery, that time all her maids are bringing all the things for Tricky, his cushion, his bowls of different food, different times food, okay, and many other things they are bringing. So that time also we come to know that Mrs. Pumphrey is having a big staff at home. So she is a rich lady, then only she can afford to keep so many servants. And in the end she comes in a black colored limousine, whose door is also opened by her driver. So from that we can make out that Mrs. Pumphrey is a very rich lady, but our Dr. Harriet is not that rich. narrator here is Dr. Harriet, is not that rich. Otherwise, if whatever things are sent by Mrs. Pumphrey for dog, he would not eat it, and he would enjoying. He and his friend was enjoying those food. Okay, so our Dr. Narrator, Dr. Harriet is not that rich. Okay, second question. How does he treat the dog? So that all mentioned in the lesson, students. First, for first 2 days he does not give him anything to eat. Only he keeps him only on water. On the third day, he notices him licking the plate of some dog. So he arranges one extra bowl for him, and then he allows Tricky to mingle with the other dogs, allows him to play with the other dogs, run, all those things, and then he keeps Tricky on a limited food. But indirectly he gives a lot of exercises to Tricky. He also arranges one bed for Tricky next to the other dog's bed. Okay, so that is how he treats Tricky. Why is he tempted to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest? So Mrs. Pumphrey was just calling Dr. Harriet a dozen times in a day to know about Tricky's progress. But afterwards, when Dr. Harriet just said that he is out of danger, she started sending many other things, food items. Okay, now Dr. Harriet knew that those food items could not be given to Tricky. So he and his friend, they were enjoying these food items. So that's why that temptation came to Dr. Harriet's mind. Okay, if I keep Tricky over here as long as I can, then we will be able to enjoy all this food. Once Tricky is out of here, then she will not send this brandy, bottles of wine, eggs and other edibles. So that's why he was tempted to keep Tricky as a permanent guest. ये जितना यहाँ रहेगा तब तक ये सब चीज़ें आती रहेगी. इसको मैंने बेच दिया ओके करके, तो वो चीज़ें आना बंद हो जाएगी. Understood? Why does Mrs. Pumphrey think the dog's recovery is a triumph of surgery? Because when Tricky was taken to this one Dr. Harriet's surgery, that time Tricky could not move on also. Okay, he was in a critical condition. He was overgrown. He had plenty of fat on his body. And when she came in the end, after fortnight, when Dr. Harriet called her, when she came to pick him, that time Tricky was totally different. He had lost all his fat. He had become very flexible, lithe, okay, and very hard muscled animal. So this transformation just made Mrs. Pumphrey believe that Dr. Harriet must have gone through some must have done some surgery on Tricky, and that's why Tricky has become this much slim and flexible. Okay, he must have taken out all the extra fat from Tricky through surgery. So that's why Mrs. Pumphrey thinks that it is a triumph of surgery. Okay, then students, we move on to your text questions, thinking about it. What kind of a person do you think the narrator, a veterinary surgeon, is? So he is a very sensible person. Okay, he is treating the animals, but he also knows how to treat the animals. Sometimes temptation come in his life through, as we saw, Mrs. Pumphrey started sending the food items and all that, and he wanted to keep that Tricky as a permanent guest over there, so he could enjoy that food. But he was not a heartless person. He could also understand what Mrs. Pumphrey was going through, and that's why he just called her. You come and you can pick your Tricky. So our narrator is a perfect doctor. He knows his job well. Okay, he doesn't go for any surgery. His treatment way was perfect, and through that treatment only Tricky got very slim and fit again. And he is not, we can say, what a greedy person. If he was greedy, he could have kept Tricky for some more time. He could have asked for a big amount from Mrs. Pumphrey, but he did not do any of such things. So he is pure of heart. He is a true surgeon. Okay, he is not greedy at all. Would you say he is tactful as well as full of common sense? Yeah, he is very tactful and he has common sense also, and that's why when he sees Mrs. Pumphrey crying, then also he takes away Tricky. Okay, he knows that this separation the owner cannot bear, then also he takes away. For him, this trickish treatment is very important. Understood? Okay. And tactful we can say because he did not tell, he treated Tricky in his own way. So that way we can say he is tactful. Okay, he did not go for any surgery, students. And the food items which was sent by Mrs. Pumphrey, that was not given to Tricky, but that was taken by he and his friend. Okay, otherwise other people might give Tricky, and again Tricky would become fat only. Then do you think Tricky was happy to go home? What do you think will happen now? So as soon as Tricky saw Mrs. Pumphrey, last time when she came in a limousine car to pick him, Tricky just got down from the writer's hand, from the narrator's hand, here Dr. Harriet, and jumped into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap and started licking her and barking. So this shows that he was very happy to go back to his mistress, Mrs. Pumphrey. But I think that again the same thing will happen. Again Mrs. Pumphrey will start overfeeding Tricky, and Tricky, which has become very slim, okay, flexible, now again he will grow very fat. After 15-30 days again he will become a fat and plump animal, because Mrs. Pumphrey is that sort of lady who takes over care of her dogs. So that's why, students, it is possible that same thing might again happen. Do you think this is a real life episode or mere fiction, or is it a mixture of both? So here we can say it is a mixture of both. Okay, in real life also we come across such people who are taking more care of their pets than their own children, and in doing so they overfeed them, they don't give them enough exercise, and that's how the condition of that pet dogs or pet animals become serious. So it is, we can say, a fiction as well as a real life situation. It is a mixture of both. Okay. So students, those questions are enough. Again some more questions are there, but those answers you will have to answer based on your understanding of the lesson as well as your experience of the world, whether you have come across such people or not. See, like that question is there. Do you think there are also parents like Mrs. Pumphrey? This I made very clear that there are some parents who don't allow their children to go out, while the others are there who allow, because they know they have to remain in this world. So they must face all the situations. They have to become all-rounder. But some are over-caring parents who are like Mrs. Pumphrey. So that all these answers will be based on your understanding and your experience of the world. Okay, till that time, students, you can go through these answers, you can write them down in your notebook once. So while writing only, you will get to know half of the lessons. Okay, so students, we end this lesson over here. Thank you and have a nice day.